Welcome, Louis, one of three Ambrose brothers who just recently crossed the Atlantic Ocean in a rowing boat, covering 3,000 miles of 1.5 million oar strokes. It took you a total of 36 days, 2 hours, and 41 minutes. How are you feeling?
Yeah, feeling pretty good to be honest.
Yeah.
Really nice to be back on land. I think not sitting down, sort of having been moving or being rocking about is a massive positive.
Yeah.
Beginning to sort of recover physically now, can walk, which is always helpful now. Hands are sort of back to normal. But whilst it is sort of really nice to be back on land, sort of it was a challenge that we set ourselves a couple of years ago. Worked pretty hard to get there. So
Mhm.
there's almost a bit of a gap now, I think, in our lives.
Yeah, because I mean, this thing's been going on for nearly 2.5, 3 years now, hasn't it? From when you first said that you were gonna try and accomplish it, and now it's all done and dusted. And how are you feeling? Do you feel like you said, is there a bit of a gap in your life now?
Yeah, slightly. I mean, it's sort of certainly towards the end of it, sort of the last 6 months, it just took up sort of every moment that you weren't, at work or
Yeah.
whatever. So I think now, yeah, there is a might be an inkling to sort of move on to the next thing. Not too soon though, or perhaps not for something sort of so extreme.
Yeah, I was going to say you probably need quite a lot of time to recover. I mean, it looked gnarly. It was a big challenge. 3,000 miles is a long way. I mean, I hadn't really, because I remember when you first told me about it a couple of years ago, to begin with, I was like, hey, that's ages away. So, he's fine. He's got tons of time to practice, and there's three of you, you'll be fine. But also, I couldn't quite comprehend sort of how far 3,000 miles is. Can you sort of put that into another perspective so like,
It's really hard to grasp.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to grasp. I think a lot of the sort of the fuss that's made beforehand about the challenges, you'll see like the sights you'll see, the nature you'll see will be unbelievable.
Mm.
In reality, like you see nothing for weeks on end. Like, all you do is either stare at the back of the person in front of his head or just look at the sea. A lot of the
Yeah.
time, it's blue or grey.
Yeah, I mean, I think you
It
have quite a lot of
really is
challenges
big.
along the way. I saw at one point you were stuck in a load of seaweed. I think that's probably the only thing you got to see, really, isn't it?
Yeah, that was sort of a brief moment of excitement actually.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
happened there then? How did you sort of stumble across that? How far into the journey was it?
I think that was pretty near the end. I think it's probably a week or so from the end.
Hmm.
We'd sort of been seeing these clumps of seaweed the whole way across, and then suddenly there's just this massive patch.
And there's no
Um,
way to avoid it, 'cause if you don't want to go round it or anything, do you just got to go straight through?
Pretty much, yeah, yeah. I mean, it wasn't a massive issue. We were able to get through it and
Yeah.
sort of call for a rescue or anything.
So was that an option then? If anything went wrong, were there people on standby who could come get you, or was it really you're in the middle of nowhere? Good luck.
I mean, it's to an extent, it's sort of a bit of both. Fundamentally, it's an like unsupported challenge. You are meant to be able to look after yourself, and the ocean is big.
Yeah.
Um, so if something were to go really wrong, then sort of the protocol is that the nearest ships would sort of come and rescue you.
Oh God, that would
Um,
be a big rescue.
yeah, which I think is pretty terrifying. And unfortunately, it did happen to one of the teams this year.
Oh no.
Yeah, so we had some pretty bad weather around Christmas, pretty
Yeah.
strong wind, and therefore some quite big waves. And unfortunately, they capsized and weren't able to rewrite the boat, so they had
Oh,
to.
I hadn't even thought about that as being an issue as well. They're quite big boats. They're not just the small. So, do you want to describe what the boat looks like? Because they're not small rowing boats like you see in the Olympics, are they? They're the big chunky things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So our one's about 8.5 meters long, and it has
Yeah.
a cabin at each end. But in total, it's sort of I think it's about 2 meters tall, and about 1.5 meters of that sits on top of the water. But then the purpose of the
Like
cabin,
that.
one of the purposes of the cabins is that sort of the way it's struck, the way it's built means that should self-right.
Mm.
So just because the way that essentially becomes, if it's the wrong way up, it becomes top heavy. So it should go,
Okay, so it flips itself.
should
Yeah.
spin back over. Yeah.
Okay. Oh God, that's quite terrifying though, isn't it? The thought of I don't know, flipping. So I can imagine that there was so much training going into this. So obviously you said that the idea sort of sparked about 2, 3 years ago. So what inspired you to do it? Do you want to talk about your dad, Hugo, and obviously the fact that he did it nearly 19 years ago now, didn't he?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. I think I was sort of 8 or 9, I think, at the time when he did it. And at the time, the challenge went over to Barbados, and we as a family went out there to meet him. And I think that sort of image is always stuck in my mind of being at the finish line and watching him come in. So I think
Yeah.
that was definitely sort of almost the catalyst, if you will. And
Yeah.
as a result of that, we've always known about the challenge, and I think it's always been sort of hanging over us.
Got to beat dad, come on.
So a few years, yeah. So a few years ago, us three sat down and thought it might be time to tick it off the list.
So how did that go down? Did you go up to him and say, right, dad, you did it in 59 days, we're going to do it in 35?
It's on. I mean, he was really supportive of it. He found it to be an incredibly beneficial experience for him.
Yeah.
So fortunately, that means that he was sort of in a positive position. But then, at the same time, there's always, as a parent, like, it's always going to be pretty daunting, perhaps.
Yeah, because the thing is, it was you, Finn, and Felix, so three brothers, all going off to sea at the same time. Like, so many challenges. The sea is a big place, like you say. It's quite a scary. So many things could go wrong. I bet your parents are bricking it. I don't know. Before you went, they're like, all three of my little babies.
Yeah, I mean, there is the sort of all the eggs in one basket. So that could be mentioned. But the information that we have and the training and sort of the preparation that you go through is really, really thorough, considerably better than it was when my dad did it. So
yeah, I bet it must have improved so much now. So I saw that the training that you had to do, you did ocean rowing, SRC marine radio, first aid, sea survival, and RYA navigation. So how long did that take you to complete all of those qualifications?
I think that was a week.
Okay. Crash course.
And they very much give you sort of the basics, the fundamentals. The best thing that you can do is, unsurprisingly, go out on the boat and row.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean like going for a couple of hours, because frankly, the rowing is the easy part. It's the getting to live on the boat, or learning to live on the boat.
Yeah, because it's quite a small space, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. So we found that quite quickly the most beneficial thing to do was sort of to go out overnight, try and go for sort of upwards of 24 hours.
So had you ever rowed before? Did you ever do it at school or in the gym or anything? Or was it like, this is my first time ever rowing, let's go 3,000 miles?
I mean, I've sat on a rowing machine before, but it doesn't translate that much to what we're doing. Sort of, obviously it is rowing, but the boat's built slightly differently, and also as well, the intensity. Yeah, the intensity that you row at is so low that it's more sort of like walking.
Okay, so you're not, because I suppose when you're in the gym, you're like, right, I'm going to go this distance in this amount of time. You really sort of, put all your effort into it. But obviously, if you're doing it for a month on end, like, you've got to set a steady pace, don't you?
Exactly. Yes. I mean, you're never out of breath when you're doing it.
And you are, of course, doing this to raise money for the Tusk Wildlife Conservation Charity, which is in Africa, currently at £26,956. That is a huge amount of money raised so far, but you're not done yet, are you? You're looking to raise up to 100,000, is it? I think the goal. I
mean, we frankly want to just keep going.
Yeah.
Like in all honesty, sort of the £100,000 was sort of a target that we set a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, just with sort of the way that things have transpired, that looks quite a long way off at the moment.
Any money for any charity is better than doing nothing, isn't it? So the fact that you've raised £26,000, nearly 27,000, that's insane amount of money. So big pat on the back for you guys.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. But I think that's exactly right. It's easy to say like, oh, we didn't reach our target, but as you said, it's still
a lot of money that you've
an extra £27,000.
Yeah. How did you choose the Tusk charity then?
So Finn, one of my brothers, had spent quite a lot of time over in Kenya. And so he sort of witnessed their work, their input firsthand. And we felt that perhaps naturally and rightly, a lot of teams go for sort of more humanitarian charities.
Yeah.
We thought perhaps try and do something a bit different and sort of try and support a conservation one.
And it's nice as well that you didn't just go eeny, meeny, miny, I pick you. That obviously Finn knows a lot about this charity. He's seen it firsthand. And so you actually went for something that's quite meaningful.
Yeah, that's right. And we did do quite a lot of research into the charity.
Yeah.
What we particularly liked about them was that they're quite a small, sort of agile charity. And what they're very good at is actually just sort of help to provide funding. So they don't have there's not like massive, like loads of boots on the ground, as you will, like in Africa. Essentially, they're just like linking sort of the money.
Oh, that's quite nice. So they're sort of overseeing, they split it up between lots of other people.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of work,
helping one, you're helping several or quite a few charities in the end.
Yeah, so a lot of the work they're doing at the moment is around sort of like anti-poaching.
Mhm.
So a lot of the money is going towards sort of supporting the rangers rather than them having to sort of try and do it themselves. They
Yeah.
leave it to the professionals, and they help
Yeah.
find funding.
Yeah. Oh, so that's actually I can't believe that though. Every time I click on it and there's more and more money, it's fantastic, isn't it? I bet you feel so happy.
Yeah, it's really good to see. Yeah.
Yeah. So before you set off, you were obviously doing little bits of training. So you said that you would do sort of 24 hour overnight rows and stuff. Was that the only thing that you were doing, or did you sort of say, oh, we're going to do a week-long little expedition, or what other bits of training did you do?
So right at the end, in sort of September, I think we did about a 3.5, 4 day one,
Mm.
which was the most beneficial bit of training that we did. But obviously the reality is that we all have lives to lead, like to live. We can't just dip off
Oh,
for
yeah.
days on end. Yeah, exactly. So day to day, a lot of it was in the gym or sat on a rowing machine. Which by
Yeah.
the end of it, we're pretty happy to
Yeah.
end, I think.
Is that when it all kind of sunk in after those 3 days that you thought we're going to have to do that now, times it by 10, we're going to be doing it for 30, 40 days? Was there a bit of panic there, or did you feel quite content where you're like, okay, we can, between the three of us, we can do this?
Yeah, I think it was probably the latter option. Fortunately, we were sort of fairly happy with sort of how we performed, how the boat itself performed. But yes, it's hard, but we always felt that it was achievable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've grown up by the seaside. So you have sailing experience and lots of, water sports experience, don't you?
I've got a little bit, but not
Not in
not
rowing
rowing.
as such, but
Yeah, not rowing. But
yeah,
no,
but at
it's
least you're comfortable in the sea. Like you kind of know what you're doing, and obviously all the training definitely helps. But as the eldest out of the three brothers, did you feel a sense of responsibility? Did you feel like you had to look after your two little brothers, or was that, you know,
I mean, there's always an aspect of where you feel slightly protective, but I'm sure they did too.
they're grown ups as well,
Yeah, exactly. Like we are all adults now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, yes, you're right. There is certainly an element of trying to look out for them, look after them, but then they're perfectly capable as well.
Yeah, of course they are.
A lot of the time they're looking after me, to be honest. So,
Yeah, they're still my brothers, still useless, but when it comes to looking after themselves, they'll be fine. How would those last couple of days? So where did you set off? So you flew over to, where did you start from again?
so flew to the Canary Islands,
Oh,
so La
okay.
Gomera,
Oh my God,
which is
and then you ended in Antigua.
ended in Antigua. Yeah,
So
yeah.
you
So we
have to
started in
take,
La Gomera, which is just off Tenerife,
yeah.
like a little island, and then we pushed off from there, and then 5 weeks later ended up in the Caribbean.
And how did that work then? How did you manage to take your boat over? Did you have to get that shipped across to the Canary Islands, or did it come on the plane with you or something? Or
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it gets shipped. So we put it in a container in about October, I think.
and you just have to go, bye bye, hopefully you're there in time.
Yeah, cross your fingers and hope that everything turns up at the other end.
Yeah. So before you set off, obviously you had to lay everything out, count everything, make sure you had enough food, toilet paper, all your, navigation equipment and stuff. Was there a moment where you thought, oh my God, have we forgotten anything? Or were you worried? Because obviously you had enough food for 60 days between the three of you, you had plenty of food. But was there ever a moment where you thought, like, what if things go really horribly wrong and we run? Did you ever have that moment of panic or fear?
I don't think there was really a moment of panic. Yeah, in
Mhm.
terms of from the preparation aspect of it, like so we did it as part of an event. So Atlantic Campaigns, who the event organizers, like they have an unbelievably good sort of like safety team who they've all done it and they've seen now hundreds of boats get across successfully,
Yeah.
or hundreds of people. And with that, year on year, it means that the advice that they can give improves, and therefore, the kit requirements, for example, they also improve.
Yeah.
So, and they're incredibly thorough at checking everything. So we went through multiple inspections just to make sure we had everything. So I think there wasn't a moment of panic, sort of in terms of us forgetting something.
No, because I was going to say they obviously know what they're doing. Like this is a whole campaign, as you said. So there's people there to help you out. How did life change then? Obviously, from waking up, having a nice hot shower, putting the telly on, to then being in a rowing boat in a confined space of two of your brothers in the middle of nowhere. What was your daily routine like? It wasn't so nice anymore, I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean that is correct. Yeah, it's I mean, honestly, you just sort of have to get used to it. There's no hiding from it, and also it's not like you have a choice. when you're out there. It's not like you sort of, you have to get up and you have to row.
Yeah.
That aspect makes it quite easy. But then at the same time, we spoke quite a lot about, the things we missed and what we were looking forward to the most, and a shower and
Yeah,
just
number
general
one.
cleanliness seemed to come up in pretty much every version of the conversation.
Tell us about the bucket then.
I mean, yeah, obviously living on a boat means you have to sort of go through all the processes. So yeah, we essentially, you just have to use a bucket for the
No more
for
needs
the,
to be said. Yeah.
honestly, there's not a massive amount of privacy either. So
But I
you
suppose that's a
become
nice thing. Imagine if you got on a boat with a couple of strangers and then all of a sudden you were in this tiny little living quarters. It's nice that it is your brothers. Like you've probably seen each other in worse places. So
I think that's right. And like, the child inside all of us will always find it quite funny.
yeah.
But you literally, you just get used to it.
Yeah. And how was
No,
it?
it's certainly not a reason
A
to.
massive bonding experience.
Yeah, we're pretty close now.
Yeah. And what did you do about showering and stuff? Did you jump in the sea? Did you ever go for a swim in the sea or?
Yeah, so we did go in the sea, but I mean, theoretically, the primary sort of objective of that was to clean the bottom of the boat.
Okay.
In terms of sort of the washing, like the best thing to do is just try and use fresh water. So we had a water maker on board, which obviously allowed us to drink water.
Yeah.
But then you just sort of wipe yourself down with a cloth as well.
Fine, baby wipes.
Baby wipes are fine, but
Yeah.
the thing is, if you have too many, they just weigh a ton. So we
Yeah,
we
and
did have some
also
baby wipes, but you don't want to rely on them.
yeah, and with food and stuff. So you had some pretty gnarly food. I mean, it was a lot of dehydrated packets, and I'm not quite sure. What was the best and worst meal that you had?
I think the best meal that I had was one of the breakfasts, which was like granola and raspberries. I found that the breakfasts actually were absolutely fine.
Hmm.
So I think essentially they're just, it's powdered milk and then some variant of like cereal.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty nice. And unfortunately, I've got quite a sweet tooth, and a lot of them are pretty sweet, so it sort of meant that was all right. In terms of like the main meals though, there was a bolognese which I quite liked, but I had it every other day, so I've sort of had to take a bit of time off from spaghetti bolognese. But then, so sort of like we had to eat about 5,000 calories a day. So
Oh,
around
God.
half of that came from these three meals,
Yeah.
and the rest would have to come through snacks. So I just ate about a lot of Oreos basically for the month.
Oh no, what a shame.
Shame, yeah.
Bummer. Yeah, and even considering that you were eating 5,000 calories a day, I mean, the weight loss that the three of you went through is actually pretty insane. So within a month, you lost 8 kilos, Felix lost 9, and Finn lost 7. That's a big drop in weight. Obviously, you were, doing a lot of exercise. How did it feel when your parents saw you? Were they like, "Oh my God, you need to get some muscle back on those bones, some fat back on those bones"?
I mean, it didn't take very long, I think, to put back on the weight. I think we weighed ourselves after about a week in Antigua, and I think Felix and Finn were back up to their previous weights. I think a lot of that is, I imagine, it's sort of like water weight as well.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
would think that you sort of dehydrate. I don't think you'd be able to eat enough calories to put on 7 kilos in a week. I think some of that must be hydration.
Yeah, I mean, you were out in the sun all day, every day. These boats, they don't have a roof over the actual rowing bit, do they? So you are getting battered by all the elements. What was the worst bit of weather that you came across? I saw there were some really big waves and horrible stormy conditions.
Yeah, so on, I think, the Christmas night, so on the night of the 25th, we had 4 days of sort of pretty horrible weather. And that it's during this period that team unfortunately capsized and had to be rescued. But yeah, that was pretty bleak, to be honest. We're feeling a bit sorry for ourselves on Boxing Day, I think. But
what way to spend Christmas?
yeah, it sort of slightly rubbed salt into the wounds, so to speak. But the issue that we found is that just once you get wet, you just couldn't get dry. Like,
Yeah.
unsurprisingly, the boats are tiny, and like then the cabins get wet, so you are just then uncomfortable.
Yeah, and you're like sticky and chafing. Were you worried about anything sort of like trench foot or any of those
I mean,
infections?
we were pretty damp, yeah.
Like,
Really was not a good look. Yeah, and the thing is, like, you just like the skin starts dying, and everything sort of falls apart a bit. Particularly pleasant. But we found that generally a lot of people said, "Oh, how are your hands? They must be so painful." but like generally your hands are sort of fine. They sort themselves out. They look after themselves. The worst bit was actually our bums, because I think just you're
Yeah.
sitting on them the whole time, and then if they get wet and you start getting salt water in there, and I think that
Yeah.
was where the issues were.
Yeah. So I mean, you had a few little injuries. I mean, back sores, legs hurting, bums hurting, calluses on the hands and stuff. But luckily, nothing too major between the three of you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we were. I think it's it's fairly rare that anyone gets seriously injured.
Mm.
Um, you know, it's more just like bumps and scrapes. I think one of the things we are looking forward to is just when you're on the boat and obviously everything's moving, sort of every time you move, you seem to bang something. So it just hurts. Like you're just slightly in pain the whole time. Yeah. It is like that, yeah. Just trying to get into the cabin and you hit your head or your knee or something like that. It's just can really weigh you down.
Yeah, and I think the thing about it is you can't just, get up and go for a stroll or stretch your legs really. I mean, you literally just have to stand on the spot, stretch, and then sit back down again. There's nowhere to go, is there?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you can sort of you can lie out in one of the cabins, but I've when I've sort of I reckon now I'm only beginning to be able to sort of stand up straight when I walk. But I'm literally about 4 inches short of
Decompress your
now there.
spine, yeah.
Yeah.
And what was it like being in the ocean? Because I mean, the Atlantic is a very deep part of water. So I think, do you know the deepest part that you crossed?
I'm not sure. I imagine it's around 5,000 meters, something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
I'd
Because I
think.
think I saw one of the other teams. Because how many other people set off with you at the same time? So it's quite a few teams, wasn't there?
Yes, there were 43 teams in total. I think it was 127 rowers.
Okay, so quite a lot
The
of people.
teams, like you can do it by yourself, and then you
Yeah.
can also go right up to a five.
Oh, okay, can you? Yeah, because I saw someone posted and they were like, their team was crossing the deepest part of the ocean. And I saw that and my spine, I went, ugh, like that is terrifying to me. How did it feel? Like, are you good with deep water, or is it kind of you just don't think about it and just cross and hope for the best?
I'm a lot better now than I was.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, if you don't want to get in, you probably don't have to. But
Yeah.
we found that sort of it's all slightly part of the experience. And like as I said, sort of we had to get in to clean the bottom of the boat, and like it was actually quite good fun.
What was that like? Was that a once a day, once a week sort of thing?
So I think the recommendation is to sort of do it probably at least once a week.
Okay.
We had some, with all that sort of all the wind and all the weather we had at the beginning, it meant that we couldn't really get in the water for about 2 weeks, or we didn't
Yeah.
brave it. I'm sure we could have. So then when we finally did it, it was quite a lot of,
Bit of a chore then.
yeah, exactly. A lot of growth came off the bottom of the boat. But then fortunately, once you finish, you end up going a bit quicker. So it's actually a bit of like a morale boost. So I
Yeah.
think from then we aim to get into every 4 or 5 days, I think, to just have a look.
Yeah, and I mean between the three of you as well, like you can take it in turns. It's not like I can't imagine doing that as a solo person. That is absolutely horrible. How did your dad do it? Did he do it with one other person or was he by himself?
Yeah, so he had a partner. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just honestly doing that by yourself is just the thought of it's just terrifying. If anything went wrong, I'd just cry for days. I wouldn't know what to do. But what was the actual sort of day-to-day schedule like? What time did you all sleep at the same time and then all wake up together, or did you take it in turns to sleep?
So we took it in turns. Our objective was to not spend any longer than we wanted to out there. So
Mhm.
we always try to have people. Well, we always had someone rowing.
Yeah.
So we split a 24-hour period into a day shift and a night shift.
Yeah.
During the day shift, which was predominantly 15 hours long, we'd row for two of us would row. So you'd row for an hour and 20 minutes, then you've had a 40-minute break.
Mhm.
So you do that for 15 hours a day. Then overnight, we would go down to one person rowing. And so you do a 2-hour shift, or everyone would row for 2 hours. And then after that, everyone would row for 1 hour. And
Oh,
then
okay.
then you come back to two. And what that meant is that for two people, you're able to get a block of 4 hours sleep, and the other person
Yeah.
had a 3 hour window. And then
Yeah.
we sort of moved that around every day. But we found that worked really well for us, because having
Yeah.
that sort of that longer block, I think it sort of really helped not didn't sort of completely get rid of it, but it just really helped with like the sleep deprivation.
Yeah, I was going to say the first couple of days must have been really tough getting into that routine. But like you say, if you're doing it week on week, it eventually just becomes as a lifestyle, isn't it, by then?
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's the thing is, like, it doesn't get any easier. You just get tired. You just get increasingly tired, but you do get better at sort of like learning to manage it.
Yeah.
What we found is that, you know, physically you're able to sort of just keep going, but mentally or psychologically, you're sort of your brain capacity seems to decrease quite quickly. Yeah. I think by the end of it, we're not having particularly productive conversations, I think.
Yeah, sort of revert back to your 5-year-old self, just going, give me Bicket or something. Yeah, it's not great, but
Pretty much, yeah, you just sort of make a weird face and some strange noise at each other.
yeah. I also saw that there was a couple of hallucinations and stuff. Was that from the sleep deprivation, do you think? Or was
Yeah, I think it is.
was
Yeah,
it?
we had and the one that I remember the most was Finn actually, and he thought a bag. We had these like a dry bag, basically just like a waterproof sort of rucksack. And I think he thought that was a roast chicken or something.
Oh, I bet he was so happy when he thought it was a roast chicken.
Yeah, I
How
think
did you sort of talk him down from that? Were you like, Finn, we're in the middle of the ocean, remember?
No, I think it was only him awake when he had it. It didn't last a long period of time, but I think the way that he explained it is that he was sort of rowing at the time. He sort of saw this thing out the corner of his eye and he's just like, what is that?
Could it be?
Could it be? But no, it was the bag. It
Oh,
was a hallucination.
shame. Also, how was the navigation? What was that like? Did you have a little screen or something telling you where to go, or was it a manual thing where you had a compass and you were just hoping for the best?
No, so we had yeah, like it's called a chart plotter. It's like an electronic device with a screen, GPS, and so you can sort of it's almost like Google Maps.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
no roads, obviously.
Yeah.
You just see where you are and see where you've got to be or where
Yeah.
you hope to end up. But so we the the way that you can sort of do the crossing is traditionally the shortest route is obviously the most direct route. But generally what that means is you may not get the advantage of the wind.
Okay.
So obviously we're rowing from sort of from east to west, and a lot of the reason that like that this can take place is because of the trade winds. So we felt that the further south we went, the more help you'd get. So quite early on, we pushed quite far south, like quite a long way further south than sort of most of the other teams.
Yeah.
And it worked. Like it did work for a couple of weeks because we were pretty light in comparison to certainly the 4s and the 5s. Obviously, with one less person, but like the conditions are probably the conditions are the biggest thing to the speed of the boat. And we sort of always said that like we'll always try and keep the boat moving as quickly as possible. So that meant we had to fight a little bit at the beginning, but then when we got a bit south, we then went quite well, like quite quickly. But that was, from a navigational aspect of it, it was slightly daunting because we were very aware that like we were going in a slightly different direction to everyone else. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I wasn't sure sort of how old school it was because obviously you had to do the navigation training and stuff, but I didn't know if that was I suppose that might be for worst case scenario, like if everything breaks and you do kind of have to go off of the stars or a compass or whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like ultimately with that crossing, it's like if you go west, you will eventually hit something. Navigation's far more complex when you're around land.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of the ocean, there's nothing. So you're not really going to hit anything unless you're unbelievably unlucky. So it's actually quite sort of one-dimensional in that aspect.
Okay. Yeah, so like you say, if you just go in a straight line, you will hit something eventually.
Yeah.
Was there ever any moments though where, for example, the wind or the waves were pushing you back and you were getting really frustrated because it felt like you just weren't moving?
Fortunately not.
Okay, lucky.
And well, sort of thankfully, the like 99.9% of the time, the conditions were sort of were roughly with us, or at least enough. Even that period, sort of just after Christmas, it was pretty hard, but sort of the conditions were all coming from the northeast, and we were trying to go west, so they are still helping, even if it is uncomfortable. The worst, I think it was actually our second last day where there was just no wind, and therefore sort of the temperature sort of skyrockets, and you're just
in the middle of the Caribbean.
You're actually really having to row.
Yeah.
That was pretty sort of hard work. But I think some of the teams that are still out there now, they're having a pretty hard time.
Are some people still going then?
Yeah. Oh. So I think I reckon there's probably around 10 to 12 teams still out there. Wow. Sort of some of the smaller teams, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, you finished about 2 weeks ago now, didn't you? 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you were out there for Christmas and New Year. At least you were with your brothers there. And what did you do for New Year's? Did you sort of go, woohoo, we can treat ourselves to a chocolate bar or something? Or
I think for New Year's we did absolutely nothing for New Year's.
just high
For
five,
Christmas,
let's go.
yeah, for Christmas we did have some treats. Um, I think I had a can of Fanta, and then I think there was a bit of dairy milk flying about as well.
Oh,
Then we
stop
had these,
it.
yeah, it was luxury. Then we had these sort of packets of like dry cured ham, I think, which
Mhm.
went down very well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nearly a Christmas dinner, I suppose.
Not far off. Yeah,
No, not far off. I do feel bad for some of the teams crossing, but there was one team this year which set a new world record, didn't they?
yeah, yeah. I
So do you
think
know how many days they did it in? I think it was
I
like
think
26 or 20 something, wasn't it?
I think there's been a few world records set, um, but various like for various categories.
Yeah, because I was going to say it can't be the same world record for one person as it is for 5 people. Like
That's
that's
exactly right. Yeah. So I think the quickest ever crossing, I think, is 29 days or something,
Mhm.
which was from a team of four. So that wasn't broken this year. Um, but I think the mixed teams one was. I think the team that came fourth, um, they were a team of two guys and two girls, and so I think they must have broken a record. And then the trios record was actually broken as well, which
No.
no, no. Well,
How
so
far off were you?
I think we're about 24 hours off.
Okay.
Um,
It was next year.
well, yeah, see what happens. But no, the team that did that were a team called Dark Trio, like, and they did like unbelievably well. And they like, thoroughly deserved it. There was a period about, I think probably when we were about 10 days out, where we realized, oh, we're probably not going to catch Dark Trio, the
Mhm.
team in front, but we might get that record, like we might beat the existing world record. So we went like rode a bit more, like try to push pretty hard for a few days.
Yeah.
But then we realized that unfortunately the forecast wasn't going our way, and that sort of everything was really slowing down. So we weren't going to be able to sort of get there essentially in time. So we sort of slightly put on the brakes and just sort of slow down a bit, try to sort of relax. And
Yeah.
a lot of the reasoning
It's
behind
almost
that was
better. You don't want to burn out or like hurt yourself or do anything too much just for the sake of catching up with this other group or
that's exactly right. And like we knew that the record idea that's gone. So we knew, and then we also knew we're very unlikely to catch Dark Trio. And what we then felt the next priority was actually the arrival into Antigua. We wanted that to be sort of during the day.
yeah.
Because obviously you're going to remember it no matter what. But one of the quite nice things is actually just having the photos and the videos. And they
Yeah,
tend to
'cause I saw all of it and I like it was incredible to see you guys coming out. You had the flares off, you were all crying and hugging and everyone was cheering. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like you say, doing it in the daytime is probably the best thing ever.
Yeah, exactly. And that sort of that was the main reason that we sort of decided to slightly slow down so the last few days, just to ensure that we came in
Yeah.
daylight really.
Yeah. So on average, how many miles do you reckon you were rowing a day?
I think the average must be somewhere around
Just under 100 maybe.
76, 77, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's
Then
just
sort of like the bigger days, you're probably up near 90 miles. And then I think there was one day towards the end where we did about 50.
so I'm over it now. I just we'll get
Yeah, I think
there.
we were fishing for about 4 hours.
Yeah, I did see that actually. You caught a pretty big fish at one point, didn't you?
Yeah, so I think it was about 2 days from the end.
Yeah.
It was a mahi, which was I mean, we ate it. It was unbelievably nice. It's got to be the freshest food I've ever eaten, I think.
Probably. What was
It was
it? Did
about
you see any other wildlife? Did you see any whales or dolphins or sharks or anything?
so we saw a pod of whales, I think, on the first night. And
Oh
then
wow,
so
I
we
bet
thought,
that
yeah,
really
so we
put
thought,
you
oh my
off.
God, this is gonna be unbelievable. Like we're gonna see so much. And then
And then
didn't
nothing.
see anything for about a week. I think it was actually we were just about to get in the water, or Finn was about to get in the water to clean the boat, and then I saw a shark
Like,
behind.
get out, get out.
Yeah, so I think he didn't get back in for a while.
Yeah,
Um,
and then next time Finn's like, Louis, you're going in. Yeah.
yeah. We did see some dolphins,
Yeah.
but I mean we can get a video of them, they're too far away.
Yeah.
Um
And like you
saw a
said,
lot.
it's such a big place, the ocean, that there could be something you know, all the way over there, but there's no chance. You're quite flat as well. It's not like you're high up on a ship and you can kind of see for miles. You're quite flat.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Unless they're right by you. But
yeah, so you
quite
have to be
scary.
slightly lucky. Sorry?
That's been scary seeing sharks.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they have a bit of a bad reputation, but I don't think
Yeah.
it's actually not going to do anything. I don't think.
No, like you say, it's a big enough boat that you're not in like a little kayak or something where an animal's going to try and attack you. Like you're in a big enough boat that it'll be fine. But
Hopefully, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
hopefully.
yeah, it hasn't happened yet. So
No, was there any other so as you came into Antigua, what was that like on that day? Could you see your family? Could you see the finish line? Did they have what did they have like fireworks going off or something to celebrate?
yeah, so I mean, in terms of like sort of on the the more the emotional side of it, I think as we were approaching Antigua, we all sort of looked at each other and thought like, I'm not that excited.
Mm,
Which obviously sounds horrible, but sort of bear with me.
yeah.
And we all sort of looked at each other and thought, oh my God, like I don't feel like sort of you don't really feel anything. Like you just feel sort of almost feels like another day.
Yeah.
And then I remember going around the corner and sort of looking over my shoulder, and you saw, well, like friends, family, etc., who were all up on this like fort which overlooked the finish line. And then we saw these like quite big sort of like super yachts. And that I think that was when like the emotions really started to sort of like to kick in.
Yeah. I can also, like you're saying though, this has been like the main thing in your life, the biggest challenge in your life for nearly 3 years. And you know, coming across the finish line, wow, amazing, it's complete. But at the same time, like I bet there was a bit of panic where you're like, now what? It's
Yeah, I
done.
mean, there
We've just spent
definitely
a month
is.
at sea together and it's done.
Yeah, there definitely is sort of, there was like an element of it being slightly bittersweet.
Yeah.
It was quite refreshing to just not have anything else to worry about.
Yeah.
Like fortunately, we're in positions where fortunately that's the case. It's not the same. Obviously, it's not the same for everyone, but like you're in an environment where all you're doing day to day is focusing on like eating or rowing. So
Yeah.
it is nice, and you do. I've been sort of slagging it off a little bit, but like you do see some unbelievable sights. Like I found that particularly at night. So there's no light pollution. So if it's a clear night, you see like the skies are unbelievable. And so those sort of aspects where like you can almost take them for granted when you're doing it,
Yeah.
but afterwards you think like that was actually quite nice.
Yeah. And I bet the first couple of nights you were like, wow, look at all the stars. And then I suppose by the second week you're like, oh, it's still stars. And then it just becomes
Exactly.
everyday life at that point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh. But now I bet you miss it. Like you do anything to go back and just be in the dark, you know, the sounds of the sea and stuff.
Yeah, it's a serious experience.
Yeah. Did you have any sort of massive arguments? Because I obviously being siblings, I think there's a line and you're always able to cross it because they're your siblings. But you know, this is a grueling challenge. Was there a moment where anyone just went, right, I can't do this anymore?
No, we didn't have any big arguments at all.
That's
I
good.
think like naturally you're in an environment where you're uncomfortable, you're tired, I don't know, you're probably in a bad mood anyway.
Yeah.
And then someone says something, you just think, oh, shut up. And you bicker more than anything. But then, being siblings, sort of literally about a minute later, you've forgotten about it and you moved on.
You're all chatting
Yeah,
away.
you're suddenly best friends again.
Yeah.
I think one thing we did notice was that like because probably partially because you're so tired and also there's not really much else going on, like the volatility at which you sort of experience emotions increases massively. So like within sort of a 5 minute window, you could be having an absolutely horrific time, and then suddenly you're loving it.
You'll be happier. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to sort of slightly bear that in mind as well. That like if you're getting wound up by someone, like probably a 50% chance that it's actually partially you. You just have to slightly keep a lid on it, I think, to bite your lip at times.
Yeah. And how was those first steps coming back onto land? So once you pulled up in Antigua, all the photos were taken. I saw the pictures of you getting off the boat and people were sort of grabbing you by the arm and helping you off. Was there a moment where you kind of went jelly-legged or was it?
Yeah, I'm pretty unsteady, to be honest. I don't think I was necessarily like jelly leg, but I could hardly stand up. Like like could hardly stand up straight. I remember being really hunched over and just it's pretty interesting experience. Quite hard to describe, I think. I wouldn't know how to like what to compare it to.
Yeah, because I was looking at the pictures and stuff, and it kind of reminded me of, when you see astronauts coming back down from space and they kind of take the first steps and everything just seems a bit disorientated. I can imagine it probably felt a little bit similar where, your world has been at sea for the last month. It's not like you've been in a big cruise ship boat where it's pretty stable. It's like you've been in this tiny little thing that's been rocking constantly.
Yeah, I think that's right. And like also you haven't actually walked
No,
for for 5 weeks. Like you obviously have to move around the boat, but like you're either like literally on all fours or you're like holding on to the handle,
pulling.
sort of like it's like sort of trying to shift yourself along. So I mean, I guess that's sort of part of it. Like you just actually haven't stood up straight and walked.
And what did your dad say to you? What was his sort of reaction when he saw that you were easily going to break his record? Was he like, oh, for God's sakes, or was he just the most proud like parent ever?
I think for him it was obviously I think it was like a like a really positive experience. I don't think there was ever that much like animosity or that much rivalry between the records. I mean, frankly, it would have been pretty embarrassing, I think, if we hadn't broken his
Yeah,
record.
three of you hadn't beaten his. Yeah.
There are three of us, and also, like the boats as well have come on a long way.
Yeah.
I think our boat probably weighed about half of what his did. So we really I'm not trying to play it down or anything, but like we did expect to
Yeah, you should have beaten.
be
Yeah.
inside 59 days. Yeah, I think, yeah.
Were you one of the youngest teams competing? Because I think I saw a lot of people were sort of 40, 50 years old maybe, and you guys are all, early mid-20s.
Yeah, we must have been one of the youngest teams. There were a couple of others. Well, there's one other who's very similar ages. A team of two sets of twins from the same family, who I think are around our ages. But then I think actually one of the girls who's still out there, Miriam, I think is 23. So I think she's the youngest.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's doing unbelievably well, still
Yeah,
going.
it's bonkers, isn't it? That there's so many challenges that you could do, and to go 3,000 miles, it's so nice to see though that you can do it at the age of 20, and also there are people doing it at the age of 50. Like it can be for everyone, this challenge, can't it?
I think that's right. Yeah, like it's such an inclusive, or can be such an inclusive event that
Yeah.
there really is sort of no yeah, like you don't have to be like some unbelievable athlete to take part. Like it's predominantly a mental challenge more than a physical one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I bet this is harder than any test or any thing that you've ever done before, being at sea.
Yeah, it's just you're in such a foreign environment,
Yeah.
so everything's sort of at times sort of everything can weigh on you, and then I think a lot of the issues sort of on the mental challenge of it sort of come from like extrapolating sort of time. We found that very early on, naturally you sort of think, oh, I've done 4 days, but now I've got to do this 9 more times, whatever it is.
Mhm.
But then sort of as time goes on, you learn to live with that and you learn to sort of manage it.
Yeah.
But I think that was, early on, that was sort of a lot of the reasons that, you feel down or depressed or sorry for yourself.
Or yeah. No, I think that's so good though. I mean, you seem like you managed to stay positive the entire time. And it's obviously nice that you had contact with, you can still contact your family. And did you have to radio people or could you phone people? I don't really know how it works. If there's signal, were you just hoping that they'd pick up?
Yeah, so we had a satellite phone.
Yeah.
So we would check in with the safety team, the event organizers, sort of probably every 3 or 4 days. They would give us a ring and just make sure that we're all
Still
still
there.
happy. Yeah, exactly. All still safe, all still well. But then sort of on the more personal side of it, like essentially you can use these phones to sort of like speak to your family, speak to friends, etc., which we sort of did. And then we did also have a device which meant that we could essentially you could get like a data connection. So we could use WhatsApp and then like send photos and videos back and forwards.
Do you think that made it better or worse, like having contact with your family? To begin with, did you feel quite homesick or?
I found it quite emotional initially.
Yeah.
I remember I think it was on Christmas actually. Like I called my mum and I could just hardly speak. I just felt like I was going to cry. I don't really know why because I wasn't sad. I was just
Yeah.
sort of yeah.
I think this is
I guess I was sad, but it's just more
yeah.
like just sort of hear other people and you think, oh,
They're all having fun without
perhaps
you.
I'd rather be at home having Christmas. Yeah.
I know. I mean, that's a really tough time of year to do it over Christmas and New Year's because, you know, you're so used to spending it with family and everything. But do they do it over Christmas for a certain reason, like you say, with the winds and the weather conditions and stuff? Is that why it's done
Yeah,
there?
that's exactly right. Yeah, so it's in a window where sort of the sea temperature should be low enough that you're not going to get any sort of anything
Yeah.
too drastic, too dangerous.
Yeah. Do you know the biggest wave heights that you encountered?
I mean, didn't measure them, but
Oh.
I think probably I would imagine something around 10 meters, like
Yeah.
from the trough to the peak, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, there was some pretty strong winds during that period, and obviously the waves have a bit of a long run up by the time they get to you. But it's not, the waves that you're seeing, it's not like what you see around the coast. They don't come like every 3 or 4 seconds. They're sort of like 100 meters or so, a couple of 100 meters apart.
Oh,
So
okay.
they're breaking. They're more sort of hills.
Yeah, of course, because they're not like rolling waves or anything, are they? They just go up and down. So I suppose
Yeah.
that must be quite straightforward. Did you have training with sort of getting through waves and stuff, or did you just have to figure it out on the spot?
I mean, to be honest, you just have to go with the waves. Like
Yeah,
the sea's far more powerful than you are. I think
I can't
you
control
are.
that.
Yeah. Like if it's windy, you're going to go with the wind.
Yeah. And have you ever watched Life of Pi? Did you ever watch the film when you were younger, or
I think I have. Yeah. Is that the one
did,
where he ends up in a
did
boat?
that ever sort of pop into your mind and you thought, oh my God, like
No, I think yeah, there were some slightly sort of sketchy moments, but nothing too bad.
yeah, no. And I mean it's done and dusted now. What's the next challenge? What are you gonna do now? Are you just bumming out or are you gonna start training for the next thing?
I think there is a bit of a gap,
Yeah.
sort of certainly in my life, and I think in Felix and Finn's as well. But there's plenty of challenges out there, and perhaps I wouldn't necessarily need to do something that's lasts sort of multiple days. I'm sure my work would enjoy it, or at least pretend they enjoy it if I actually go back and do something. So I think I might have to sort of go and do that for a bit.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I mean, I'm sure there'll be some sort of goal, but it's not going to be some like something sort of as equivalent as this. I think for a little bit of time.
Yeah, I think you definitely have a well-deserved, you know, time to have a break and just to chill out. How long were you in Antigua for?
I think 10 days,
Okay, so was that all just beaching, like sleeping?
pretty much. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I was absolutely sick of the sun.
Yeah,
I don't think I actually, I genuinely don't think I went in the sun. I just sat under the umbrella for about a week.
been
Um,
grumpy.
yeah, exactly, just with a cocktail. No,
Mm.
it's a really nice place to end up, obviously.
But
So I
like
don't
you
want
said, when
to,
you've been out there for a month in the weather, like just in the sunshine, you probably want a break.
yeah, exactly. So I don't want to sound too ungrateful, but there certainly was an element where I thought like, oh my God, I wouldn't mind just
Um,
I wouldn't mind being in the UK in February.
yeah, and I bet the first night that you got back, I'm assuming you just went straight to a hotel, lay in a bed, had a shower, like ate a proper food of dinner. How was that? Was there a moment? Because I know that when people go on these sort of challenges and they've been eating even not enough food or they've been missing out on certain vitamins and stuff, when they come back and they first eat, they have real problems with their stomachs and stuff because they're just not used to the rich food. Did you feel like that, or you
Yeah,
were right?
we no, fortunately we didn't have any of that. Um, I think that the nicest thing was definitely the shower. I think well, I at least found that I didn't really have any massive food cravings when we were out there. I think that's probably just because you're eating so much.
Yeah.
You are literally just ramming food down your face, so you don't have any time to be hungry.
Was it hard to keep up that 5,000 calorie diet? Because I mean, that's a lot of food.
It was hard at the beginning.
Yeah.
We've probably for the first 4 or 5 days, I think we all didn't eat enough, and as a result, just your performance drops.
Mhm.
But you sort of, you learn, you almost eat like you force yourself to sort of eat to a prescription almost.
Yeah.
We found that once you sort of get into a routine, like you come off, we have this 40-minute, you have a 40-minute break, and we just try and eat like 500-600 calories and just continuously do that the whole time. And that meant that you're not having to sit down and trying to eat like 1,000 calories of couscous. It's quite hard work,
Yeah.
especially when it's really hot. But doing sort of breaking it up into a couple of sessions is a lot easier.
Mhm.
I think what perhaps what we did learn is that, you know, the most important things sort of to your physical performance in that event, I think, were just hydration and nutrition. Like the sleep aspect is very much, you know, less important than
Yeah.
those two factors. Um, if you're eating and drinking enough, you can really function off very little sleep. Not particularly pleasant,
No, it's not
but
going to be fun, is it?
it
But
can be done. Yeah.
did you ever get bored? What were you doing when you were rowing? Were you chatting, or were you just sat in silence? Did you ever play cards or listen to the radio or anything?
Um, I don't think couldn't really say I've got bored,
Hmm.
but you did go for quite long periods of time sort of without talking, and you sort of go into your own little world, and which can be good or it can be bad. It sort of, it depends on how you handle it, and you get better at sort of at managing it. Because I think early on, a lot of what we did was sit in silence. Everyone's just dreaming about not being on the boat, but then you learn to manage it, and you can sort of progress. We found that, I think initially we went out and started listening to loads of music, but we actually found that that didn't really help. Um,
I suppose
we
sometimes it's
found that,
nice just to be like in the moment, in the element, and focus on that.
yeah, I think that's right. And like the thing with music is it sets a mood, so you have to be a bit careful about what you're playing.
You
And
don't want to get too like riled up and then waste your.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And you don't want to listen to anything sort of too depressing either.
No, God, no.
And then also, I think just because obviously like a song is generally around like 3.5, 4 minutes, you're always slightly conscious about like how quickly time's going.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes I suppose it might just be better just to zone out and then be like, oh, it's been 2 hours instead of being like, oh my God, it's been 4 minutes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we found that, we sort of ration the music. So come sort of like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we'd then start listening to music. So
Yeah.
then sort of throughout the day, you almost look forward to it.
Yeah, it gives you a little
But
chat board.
yeah, but like, honestly, the best way to pass the time is actually by talking, which we did try, but I think, like I said, by the end of it, you're not really making that much sense.
Yeah.
So the conversations were pretty,
Inaudible. Mm.
yeah, I don't think they made a lot of sense.
And do you think you'll keep up your rowing? Do you think you'll get back on the boat again anytime soon, or
I don't think I'll be rowing
ever?
ever. No, I just didn't really enjoy the actual. When I say this, I mean like rowing on a rowing machine.
Hmm.
I just find it pretty boring, to be honest.
Do you have
Yeah,
the boat? Has the boat come back to England with you, or?
no, so the boat's being shipped back, sort of like hopefully as we speak. So it's en route. I think we'd probably get it in a month or so's time.
And do you think you'll ever take it back out again? Just, row to the Isle of Wight or something for the fun of it?
Go for lunch. No, I
Yeah,
think
cheaper than the
we'll
ferry.
yeah, no, we'll probably, I think we'll need to sell it. So we'll look for a team that's probably doing it in 2 years' time, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
offload it onto someone else. Their problem then.
Yeah, exactly. There's a market for it. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, but we can get rid of it.
Yeah. And what would you say to someone who's thinking of doing this challenge or a challenge similar where you're quite isolated and it's really tough, massive scale challenge? What sort of the main message you try and get across to them before they start?
I mean, I would like sounds a bit cheesy, but like I would say 100% do it. Like go for it. Um, don't worry about it being difficult or challenging or anything like that because you adapt.
Yeah.
Like you change. Like the human body is quite a useful bit of equipment.
Yeah.
So you get better at things very quickly. But that's not to say like be naive and just say yes. Like you also do need to go through the preparation for it. So do the work beforehand. Just be meticulous, be disciplined, and just, I mean, frankly, like be consistent.
Yeah, I think that's obviously you guys showed it so well. Like you had a plan, you set out nice and early, you worked through everything, you got all your qualifications, did all your training, figured out exactly what you needed to do. Even when you were on the boat, you were sort of planning your schedule on what you were gonna, how you're gonna sleep, who was gonna row, what you're gonna eat. So I think, like you say, you've got to stick to it, don't you? It's really a big challenge.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And like I sort of said, like it's all very well having a plan, but if you don't stick to it, then it's pointless. So you have to be consistent. And that's not to say like blindly follow what you set out to do, because particularly in this sort of thing, it will change.
Mhm.
But be aware of that. But at the same time, be disciplined enough to, you know, it's just holding yourself accountable.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Was there ever a moment when you were just so tempted to give up or quit and you just really had to pull yourself out of it? Or were you pretty good?
I mean, honestly, you can't really quit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no one's gonna
It's
come
not
pick
it's
you
not
up.
like a running race where you can just stop running. Like,
Yeah,
we're a long way from land, so you do have to keep rowing.
yeah.
I mean, theoretically, you could get rescued, but that's not a situation you want to be in.
No, and I think also the thing with that is you can't just be like, oh, I'm bored, I don't want to do it anymore because someone can pick me up. Like you have to be in serious trouble for someone to, go halfway out into the middle of nowhere to go get you. So
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, like to be picked up or to be rescued, it would be by another, literally like by a container ship. So like you're
do that, yeah.
not an easy, it's no easy task. Yeah.
No, but that is honestly, it's just insane that you've done it and that you've raised £27,000 for the Tusk charity, 3,000 miles. Do you think you'll ever do it again? Yes or no? Will you ever try and beat your
I'd do it
record?
again. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would
Do you
definitely. Yeah, I
convince
mean,
Finn
for
and
me, it
Felix,
was.
or
I'm sorry.
do you convince Finn and Felix still, or try and find other people?
Um, I mean, we haven't discussed it in as many words. I think we'd all do it again.
Yeah,
Perhaps do it as, we'd do it slightly differently. I think they both mentioned that they thought maybe doing it as a pair, not together, but just, as part of a team of two might be quite a good sort of quite interesting.
yeah. That's so nice though that it hasn't put you off for life. That you're all like you all enjoyed it clearly, and that you would be keen to do it again. And that it is a daunting challenge. Like this, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that it's easy. It only took a month, but in reality, it took nearly 3 years. It's not, it's a big challenge, but you've done it now, and it's all
Yeah,
over.
I know. It's quite a weird feeling. No, I think that's right. Like, like yes, it's hard. Yes, it's difficult, and you have some really crap days. But then, the feeling of literally the feeling of crossing the finish lines was worth it. I'd probably do it again just for. Well, you would do
Just
it
for
again.
fun
That
time, yeah.
feeling. Yeah, exactly. Like it is worth it. And like the sort of perhaps like the pride and sort of the pride that you have as a result of completing it, and just the benefit I think that I know that it can now sort of do for me. I think is obviously a massive positive. Like you learn a lot about yourself,
Yeah.
uh, good and bad. But that's I don't want to sound too much like David Goggins or something, but like you do you learn a lot about yourself, and like you just learn sort of how to improve yourself as well.
No, but that's honestly so great. I mean, not only is it a good physical challenge, but also I suppose that like you say, you probably changed and learned so much about yourself in so many aspects of your life. It's a great story. If anyone asks, oh, what's the best thing you've ever accomplished? Mate, I rode the Atlantic. Insane. But also, you've got all these things, help you work well in a team. What's the hardest thing you've ever done in your life? It's an unbelievable challenge. So congratulations to you, Felix and Finn. And maybe next year, or maybe in 5 years' time.
I think we'll give it a couple of years. Yeah, maybe we'll do a 10-year anniversary or something.
Oh, that would be cool. Right, if that ever happens again, I'll be out in Antigua this time. We'll do an interview right at the end, and then
Looking forward to it.
yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Lewis. So nice talking to you. If you would like to go donate, I'll leave the link down below so people can go donate. Currently at £27,000. Anything you want to say about the charity? One quick last word.
I think really just to, if you can, then like please do keep donating. Like with sort of like with everyone at the moment, like times are pretty hard. The work that they're doing is incredibly important. And
Yeah.
if they don't do it, then it does leaves a huge gap.
Yeah, I mean, so many animals and are struggling at the moment, so it's so nice just to, a fiver can help, £2 can help, however much you've got, just a couple of pennies would be nice. So please do go and donate. And if anyone has any more questions about rowing the Atlantic, or if you're thinking about doing it yourself, Louis is your guy to go talk to.
Yeah, I mean, like honestly, if you do have any questions, then perhaps probably use our Instagram page. I think, like honestly, like happy to answer anything.
What's the Instagram again? It's Ambrose Buoys, isn't it?
Ambrose Buoys, yeah, with
That was in the floaty boys.
as in the floaty boys, yeah.
Boys. Good play on words there. Lovely. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. This has been very, very good and useful. And it's kind of inspired me. I want to do something, but the ocean scares me. I don't know. I'll find a challenge.
Go for it. I would say 100%. Throw
Yeah.
yourself into it.
I know when I saw you guys cross the finish line, my heart just exploded. I was like, what a cool thing to accomplish. I need to work up to something now, and you've truly inspired me. So hopefully you inspire lots of other people as well.